Up close tonight, does the federal government have another Fast and Furious problem it's trying to ignore? Fast and Furious was that botched gun-running operation where weapons were allowed to be smuggled out of the U.S. and into Mexico in hopes of tracking them to drug cartels. But U.S. authorities lost track of many of the guns, never really had a way to track them. And this man paid the price. U.S. Border Agent Brian Terry was killed with one of those missing guns. Now, the Justice Department has taken a lot of heat for Fast and Furious. Attorney General Eric Holder has said that the debacle was an isolated mistake.
The notion that you would let guns walk in a firearms case is, for me, absurd. Absurd. And it was the reason why I said it cannot happen, why we stopped it. It is not DOJ policy, and anybody who does it now is breaking a direct directive from the Attorney General of the United States.
Well, strong words, no doubt about it. But now the Justice Department is facing new questions about guns that were illegally bought in Texas and used to kill another U.S. agent. Drew Griffin reports.
It was just another assignment for Immigration and Custom Enforcement agent Jaime Zapata. He told his mom and dad it would just be a short time in Mexico. No danger, just business stuff.
So were you worried?
No, I wasn't worried because I thought he was going to fly from Laredo to Mexico City Airport, go to the embassy, and work from there. I didn't see anything wrong.
Then on February 15th of last year, the phone rang. The second Mary Zapata learned her son had been shot, she ran to the bathroom, she says, and began calling her sisters-in-law, pleading with them to pray.
When I got off the phone, my son told me, Mom, Jaime's dead.
Oh, that really...
That was very devastating.
Jaime Zapata was killed when he and his partner were ambushed on a Mexican highway between Mexico City and Monterrey. It was an ambush by drug gangs on two U.S. law enforcement agents traveling alone in a conspicuous blue Suburban. Zapata's surviving partner says the killers knew full well they were shooting at U.S. agents.
Agent Zapata's story is one that we must not forget, and it is one that we will not.
The story could end there. A U.S. agent shot and killed in an ambush on a dangerous stretch of highway smack in the middle of a drug war. But it doesn't. Mary and Amador Zapata have nagging questions that point to a cover-up from their own government. Namely, did the ATF watch as guns used to kill Jaime Zapata were sold illegally in Texas and allowed to, quote, walk from Texas into Mexico with no hopes of tracking them?
Why has it been so hard to get the answers that you want?
I don't know. I expected it to have a response or a report 30, 45 days afterwards.
It's been more than a year.
More than a year.
It's been a year. And you're talking
asked?
about the government, the U.S. government, in conjunction with the Mexican government. Why is it taking so long?
The chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, already investigating a similar ATF operation called Fast and Furious that allowed guns to walk from Arizona to Mexico, says what happened in Texas looks very similar. In Fast and Furious, authorities lost track of thousands of smuggled weapons. Two of them turned up at the crime scene of a U.S. law enforcement agent's murder. Now, two guns recovered at the Zapata crime scene have been traced back to purchases made in Texas. According to court documents, one of the guns, an assault rifle, was purchased here in this suburban Dallas gun store in October 2010 by Otilio Osorio. Internal ATF records show months before the purchase, the ATF was tracking Osorio and knew he was trying to smuggle guns into Mexico. The operation seized some of those weapons before they reached the border, but not one of the guns used in Jaime Zapata's murder.
They were maybe under surveillance by the ATF.
The second gun was traced to a man named Manuel Barba, who bought 10 guns in Houston on August 20th, 2010. One of them, a semi-automatic rifle, was also used in the killing of Agent Zapata. Both men have pleaded guilty to gun trafficking charges. Neither was charged in Zapata's murder. The ATF flatly denies its agents were watching either man when the gun purchases in question were made. In fact, ATF says it didn't even know Manuel Barba's existence until 3 days after he bought the gun used in Zapata's killing. As soon as ATF did find him, Barba was arrested. In other words, the ATF and the Department of Justice say this was not Fast and Furious.
The Department of Justice has tried to maintain that this was just only in Arizona, this was only very limited, it didn't spread to other states. You say no?
No.
Since their son's killing, Jaime Zapata has been honored by top federal law enforcement officers, including the Attorney General Eric Holder and President Barack Obama himself. Despite the accolades, though, there are still no real answers. Just where did those guns come from? Why did they end up at that crime scene? And what was Jaime Zapata doing in Mexico? The attention has now focused to Senate hearings, to Congress, and to government officials who so far will not answer any of those questions.
Whoever let these guns walk should be held accountable for what happened to my son.
Amador Zapata no longer wants more accolades for his son, just the truth. Drew Griffin, CNN, Brownsville, Texas.
Well, in his piece, Drew mentioned the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Its chairman is Congressman Darrell Issa of California. He's a Republican. I talked to him about this a short time ago. Congressman Issa, two of the guns found at ICE Agent Jaime Zapata's murder scene in Mexico were traced to gun buyers in Texas. You've been investigating the ATF Fast and Furious operation in Arizona. Are you concerned that what happened in Arizona was also happening in Texas?
Well, we are, and there are similarities. These were known straw buyers that were not intercepted or stopped. And ultimately, gun walking, everyone has a different definition, but when you let weapons go from the control of a federally licensed gun dealer to a straw purchaser to an intermediary and ultimately to the scene of a crime, if you don't interdict that immediately and/or follow the weapons and interdict it before you lose control, you're gun walking, and clearly that appears to have happened in Texas.
The parents of ICE Agent Zapata say they feel their questions surrounding the murder of their son have basically fallen on deaf ears. You've pressed the ATF, the Department of Justice, for answers. What have they told you?
Well, they've continued to give us a great deal of inappropriate answers, inconsistent. As you know, we've subpoenaed information fairly broadly and received a small amount of it. Out of our 80,000 pages we know to exist, we've received 6,000 pages of answers. And only recently, after Attorney General Holder was in front of our committee, did we get a renewed promise that these documents would be forthcoming.
The ATF is telling us that they did not watch guns walk into Mexico from Texas, that they're not aware of the purchases of both weapons found at the Zapata murder scene, and this was not similar to Fast and Furious. Do you buy that? Are you satisfied with that response?
Well, Anderson, we've been lied to by the Department of Justice. We've been lied to by some of the ATF. Ultimately, the former director of the ATF, Kenneth Melson, he was pretty straightforward in telling us what he didn't know and why he didn't know it, and how he felt when he found out that guns had walked, that in fact Brian Terry's death was blood on the hands of ATF agents who had allowed these weapons to go as part of what's called an OCDEF, a combined task force headed by Justice, that had in fact said, break away, let these weapons go.
One of the men who was convicted of providing weapons to cartels in Mexico was under ATF surveillance months before he purchased a weapon that was found at the Zapata crime scene. They were aware of his intentions to take guns to Mexico. Is it your feeling that he should have been arrested before he can move any more weapons?
Well, ATF agents on both sides of the border have told us that once you have enough to know that somebody has done something and to indict them with a felony, you take them down. And you take them down because at that point you either take them out of action or you flip them and make them part of your investigation. They missed opportunities to use people that they had felonies against as if you will, roll-up witnesses, which means they violated good procedures that historically have allowed them to climb the chain to get to the bigger fish. Instead, they made the assumption that if you let the weapons disappear and they reappear at a crime scene, that somehow that was going to allow you to make the connection between these 2 points, something that they haven't shown us they can do.
Congressman Issa, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.